Olympic weightlifting is one of the most complex sports to train for. The balance of technique, mobility, strength, and speed can make it incredibly challenging to know exactly what you need to be focusing on. But if you make the wrong decision, you could be wasting weeks of training. If you want to make sure that you're focusing on the right things, then you'll need to get good at identifying bottlenecks. I found that most beginner weightlifters tend to struggle with one of 4 bottlenecks: technique, strength, muscle mass, and mobility. In this video, I'll help you identify and attack those weaknesses so you can do what matters most: set PRs. The first bottleneck that we need to talk about is technique. It's the most obvious one and the biggest bottleneck that you'll face as a beginner. It's hard to get good at the snatch and clean and jerk if you don't know how to do the snatch and clean and jerk. Now, the cool part about technique being your biggest bottleneck is that one small change can lead to 5 to 10 pounds worth of improvement. Stack 5 to 10 of these small technique changes and you can make a lot of progress really quickly. Now, keep in mind that this mostly applies to beginners who don't have a good foundation of technique. If you are a beginner, then your best bet is to learn the Olympic lifts correctly the first time, which you can do for free if you pick up my free Weightlifting 101 beginner guide and 6-week program, which I'll link in the description below. But let's go ahead and go over some of the basics. Now, some of the biggest technique stuff that we can take a look at are the basics. Making sure that you have the right pulling and squatting stance, the correct grip placement, and that you're using hook grip. These seemingly simple things can make a huge difference in your lifts, so take the time to find the stance that works best for you by studying some of the best lifters who look like you. For example, if you're 6 feet tall and 300 pounds, try not to mimic the technique of Lu Xiaojun, but maybe take a look at Lasha's setup and stance. This is not a perfect method, but it will get you pretty far. Finding your grip is pretty simple. For the clean, just use the grip that feels the most comfortable for you for a front squat. For most people, this is just outside of the shoulders and making sure that you're not sandwiching your fingers under the bar between your shoulders. For the snatch, especially as a beginner, your grip will largely be determined by your mobility level. If you hold the barbell overhead and try an overhead squat and the bar drifts forward no matter what you do, then you probably need to take your grip a little bit wider. And if the opposite happens, as you get down into that squat and that bar just keeps drifting back or just feels unstable overall, you might need to bring your grip in a little bit narrower. But when you're making these changes, make small changes. A finger's width can make a big difference. Once you've got the basics like stance and grip placement, the next thing that we need to focus on is your positions. For our positions, we're looking for a consistent start position, knee position, and power position for the snatch and clean, and a consistent rack position, dip position, and split position for the jerk. One of my favorite drills in Weightlifting 101 is the use of the double pause snatch, clean, and jerk. By pausing in each of these positions, you can take the time to ingrain them in your brain so that they become muscle memory. Once your positions are set, it's time to learn the proper timing of the lift. There are 2 elements to proper timing for the Olympic lifts. The first is timing the transition from leg effort to arm effort. So making sure that you understand the principle of legs launch the bar up, arms move the body down quickly. The second element of timing is understanding the natural tempo of the lift. Ideally, during the snatch and clean and jerk, the lift will start slow and get progressively faster throughout. In the snatch and clean, this means that the lift will be slowest below the knee, faster past the knee, and fastest from the extension to the receiving position. For the jerk, the dip will be slowest, the drive will be faster, and the extension to the split will be the fastest portion of the lift. This is the natural tempo of a max effort lift, so with lighter weights, you still want to practice it with the same tempo, even though you could probably move the lighter weights much faster in the beginning. One of the best ways to work on this is the next progression in Weightlifting 101, the tempo snatch and the tempo clean and jerk. By slowing things down in the lift, you can learn how the positions that you practice create speed, and not just be speedy for speed's sake. Okay, now that we've got the technique part out of the way, we can talk about the next bottleneck, because while weightlifting is a very technical movement, it's still a strength sport. And if you can't squat it, you won't clean it, no matter how good your technique is. There are only 6 lifts that you need to focus on to get stronger for the Olympic lifts: the back squat, the front squat, the strict press, the push press, the snatch pull, and the clean pull. If you just touch each of these lifts once a week, you'll have all of your bases covered. However, if you only had to choose two, I would choose the back squat and front squat. The squat is the main driver of strength for the Olympic lifts. For most people, if your squat goes up, your Olympic lifts will likely go up as well. When it comes to increasing your squat, I recommend my 12-week squat program, which I'll link in the description below. After the squats, the next lifts that I'll add in are the strict press and push press. And if you can only do one day of pressing, then I would work up to a heavy top set of 1 to 5 reps on the push press, and then perform 3 to 5 drop sets of 5 to 10 reps on the strict press. This will help build muscle in the shoulders and help make your snatches and jerks feel more stable and strong, assuming you have decent technique. After the presses, you can add in the snatch pull and clean pull to really round out your strength training. As both the snatch and clean start with a pull, it makes to have a surplus of pulling strength. However, for most beginners, this is not your limiting strength factor. But this can change over time, which is why it's so important to reassess your bottlenecks on a regular basis to get the most out of your training. Besides technique and strength, muscle mass is probably the biggest bottleneck for beginner weightlifters, especially if you're starting out at a younger age. Now, you can get stronger without putting on any muscle mass. Sometimes it's necessary for lighter weight lifters who need to stay in their weight class and maintain their muscle mass while increasing their strength. However, for most of us, it's much easier to build strength if you just have more muscle to work with. You know the science fiction trope about how we can only use about 30% of our brain's potential, and if we unlocked all of it, who knows what we'd be capable of? Well, the same thing kind of applies in strength as well. You are currently capable of using a certain amount of your muscle mass's potential, and there are some styles of training that you can do that will increase your ability to use a higher percentage of that muscle mass. But if you want to get stronger, you could just go get more muscle mass. Now, it's important to state that there's not much of a difference between building strength and building muscle in your training. If you're doing the 6 main strength lifts like I mentioned before, you're going to build muscle mass, but sort of as a byproduct of building strength. But we can take this much further with focused hypertrophy work. After your main strength exercises to further take the weak muscle groups to failure and build more muscle. But which muscle groups should you focus on? As a weightlifter, you'll want to build muscle in the quads, core, and back primarily, and in the hamstrings, shoulders, and arms secondarily. I've written more about this in my free Accessories 101 guide, so if you want to learn more about this and get my top 33 accessory exercises to help build muscle for weightlifters, then you can find that linked in the description below. The final bottleneck, and probably the most frustrating one for a lot of people, is mobility. If you want to be great at weightlifting, you need to have sufficient mobility. I'm not asking you to be a master yogi, but you do need to be able to squat deep, front rack a barbell, and be stable overhead. If you don't have enough mobility in one or more of these areas, it can present as technique errors. But if you don't have someone in your corner pointing these things out to you, then you can waste a lot of time trying to address these technique issues that are actually mobility restrictions. So let's cover some of the big ones. To improve your squat depth, there could be a ton of causes. But one of the best fix-all exercises that I've found is simply squatting. I like to use something called the double pause squat. For this exercise, pause at the point that you normally stop at for your depth and hold for 3 seconds. Then inch a little bit lower and hold for an additional 3 seconds. 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 5 reps, 1 to 2 times a week should get your squat depth feeling right in a very short amount of time. Now, your front rack position affects both your clean and your jerk, which means that it should be a big focus for you if you struggle here. Limited mobility in the front rack position can come from tight lats and pecs, limited external rotation of the shoulder, and limited ability to protract the shoulder blade. Now, I know that's a lot of words, so don't worry. There's only 2 things that you really need to do to improve this position. The first is an underhand dead hang. Reach as much of your palm over the bar, then sink deep into the stretch to feel a good stretch in the lats and force some external rotation of the shoulder. 2 to 3 sets of 30 seconds in between sets of some empty barbell warm-up work should get everything feeling pretty good. The other exercise is the scat push-up, which helps with pushing your shoulders forward or protracting the shoulders to create a good front rack position. Set up like you would for a forearm plank. Then alternate between pushing away from the ground and rounding your upper back, and then sinking forward and squeezing your shoulder blades together. 2 to 3 sets of 5 to 10 reps in between some of your empty barbell work or in between sets with the underhand dead hang should get that front rack position feeling really good. And if your wrists hurt and you think that it's a lack of flexibility in the wrists, it's probably not. It's honestly probably one of those two issues. And finally, if you struggle in the overhead position, then one of the best exercises you can do is the press and snatch. This is a pretty challenging exercise for most people, so you'll probably need to use a lighter training bar and maybe even modify the depth of this a little bit. But try out this progression. Start in a standing position with your snatch grip and press the barbell up overhead from behind the neck. If this feels easy, then sink down into a quarter squat and do the same thing. If that position feels easy, then try a half squat and then a full squat. Probably a little bit more challenging, right? If you can comfortably do a normal barbell in a full squat or even use a little bit of weight for this, then you probably don't really need to focus on this in your training. But if you do struggle with it, then try 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 5 reps before your snatches, and I guarantee that your snatch position is going to feel much more stable and mobile overhead. Now, if these mobility drills were helpful, then you can find my free Mobility 101 guide for weightlifters linked in the description below, or you can check out this video that I posted about mobility. That's everything for this video. Let me know in the comments what your bottleneck is and make sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.